Greetings and thanks for joining us for this paranormal pit stop. Tonight, we'll be adventuring across a famous and popular 15-acre federally owned island expanse, acting as an enclave of the Manhattan boroughs of New York City, New York. Its placement in the upper New York Bay has it bordered also by waters from Jersey City, New Jersey, holding both the Statue of Liberty and its associated museum, and purported to harbor a range of chilling supernatural phenomena. Are you prepared to explore the history and hauntings of the iconic Liberty Island? Historically, predating European settlement, the closest areas of the New York Bay to what is now Liberty Island were initially inhabited by the Lenape people, who harvested the oysters plentifully found on the local tidal flats. And following European settlement through the 17th century, 3 islands located just offshore were called the Oyster Islands. In 1664, one Captain Robert Needham would be granted our future Liberty Island under the English governor, and would, on December 23rd of 1667, sell the plot to Isaac Bedloe, who would retitle the spit as Bedloe's Island. Bedloe's Island would remain in the Bedloe estate until 1732, when it was sold to New York merchants Henry Lane and Adolphe Philippe for just 5 shillings. During Philippe and Lane's ownership, the island would be commandeered by the city of New York and would be utilized as a smallpox quarantine for a time. And in 1746, it would be purchased by Archibald Kennedy, who would transform it into a summer residence while adding a lighthouse. In 1756, Kennedy would once again allow for the spit to be used as a smallpox quarantine, and on February 18th of 1758, the Corporation of the City of New York would purchase the island for use as a pest house. Leading up to the American Revolution, during British occupation of New York Harbor, a camp to house Loyalist refugees would be established on the islet, though on April 2nd of 1776, this camp was literally burned to the ground by colonial troops. And in 1800, the expanse was ceded by New York to the federal government for the establishment of Fort Wood, which was constructed between 1806 and 1811 in preparation for the War of 1812. Subsequently, by the time the island was selected to hold the Statue of Liberty through the 1800s, though this very same Fort Wood was obsolete as a defense, its stone walls were actually utilized to form the impressive base of the national icon we know today. The statue itself, a gift from the people of France to mark the American centennial, was created by Frederick Auguste Bartholdi in 1884 and was later placed and dedicated in America in 1886. In 1956, the long-traipsed islet was officiated as Liberty Island under an act of Congress. In 1984, the statue would undergo a series of renovations and repairs in preparation of its centennial. In 1986, the original Liberty torch was replaced with our current one, which is covered in 24-karat gold, and later the same year, the site would be reopened in time for the 4th of July weekend. In 2016, construction was started on a modernized museum, more apt at handling the island's visiting masses, and in 2019, this facility would open its doors, offering a range of exhibits alongside the statue's original torch for viewing. Liberty Island remains open into the present and is accessible by way of boat or regularly scheduled ferry rides from either Battery Park in Lower Manhattan or from Liberty Island State Park out of Jersey City. Additionally, those who wish to stand within the statue's pedestal must hold an additional ticket, and those wishing to climb to Lady Liberty's crown must obtain a limited access permit. Over the lengthy history of its usage, Liberty Island has been surrounded by a number of fascinating local legends and chilling ghost stories, one of the most prominent of which telling that Captain William Kidd buried a stash of loot somewhere about. Supporting this claim is the fact that Kidd actually lived off Pearl Street in New York for around 4 years, at a location from which he could have easily kept an eye on the island. This legend furthers to tell that his buried treasure is protected by supernatural entities, and it's even documented that when soldiers Sergeant Gibbs and Private Carpenter of Fort Wood went searching for the loot, even going so far as to hire a psychic to find its exact location, that they ended up digging up a human skull alongside the chest, and that a demonic being, some say the vengeful manifestation of Kidd himself, rose from the hole they dug. Chillingly, it's written that Carpenter ran for his life while Gibbs was stood in stare and was subsequently tossed into the harbor by this ethereal monster when the two men gathered themselves in return for the chest. It's told that the beast was nowhere to be seen and that their hole was completely empty. Rather grimly, for more than a century, Liberty Island was used as a stage for hangings, on which countless privateers and pirates met their fates, including the likes of Dutch sailor Cornelius Wilhelms, who, along with cohorts, killed the captain and officers on his ship before slaughtering other male passengers and throwing female passengers overboard, and Albert Hicks, who in 1860 marked New York City's last public execution. Hicks, who'd killed his entire crew and made off with their vessel and goods, would be greeted by a crowd of more than 12,000 for his final drop at the gallows. And to date, across Liberty Island, some have described encounters with a malevolent force thought to be tied to one of these infinitely cruel men. Also reported across the whole of this weathered spit are objects sighted moving on their own, doors that open and close by themselves, and alarms that sound without cause. Additionally, countless lives were lost on Liberty Island during times of quarantine and through its usage as a pest house. For many, it was literally the only American soil they would ever see, and both visitors and officials to the stretch have reported encounters with a range of apparitions in old-fashioned clothing after dark, many who look malnourished or sickly, and most who disappear when approached. Several informal investigations of Liberty have yielded high EMF levels, extreme temperature fluctuations, and orbs and eerie shadowy figures in photography, and many describe the constant feelings of being watched or followed, or even of being touched by something unseen. Following placement of the Statue of Liberty, a number of sailors passing by reported hearing disturbing otherworldly groans and moans emanating from within, and while these sounds were eventually chalked up to the structure settling, local sea tales tell the commotion is actually a result of the multitude of souls trapped on the island, crying out for help, and a handful of watchmen and workers over the years have avidly refused to stay on shore after dusk. Lastly, several spook lights have been sighted and even photographed flitting about the massive effigy, and pale faces have been spied peering from inside of its crown, at times when the interior should be closed and locked for the night. Thanks for joining us for this Paranormal Pit Stop. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, throw us a like, and share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. Good night.